thing, but it is in the power of the tongue that God gets his greatest glory. Because if you're willing to ask from him, and if you're willing to trust him and believe on him, there are some things he will make happen in the time of life. And it's according to the season, about that season. Come on with me back to the text. So anyway, the woman goes home. But if you look up in the passage of the scripture, when the man of God spoke to her, he said this. He said, you're going to embrace. In other words, you're going to kabaka. You're going to clap hands and hold a son. Now, he's speaking to her when she had nothing. Have you ever had God to give you a word when you ain't got nothing? You sitting wondering how you're going to pay a bill, and God is telling you it's coming. You shall have. You're asking God, all I want is someone in my life. God saying he shall come in due season. But we don't want to wait on our season. But there are some things that we have to go through in the time of life. What am I saying when I'm saying the time of life? When you're sitting there still single. When you're sitting there wondering how that bill is going to get paid. In that time, look at your neighbor and tell them that time. In the time of life when you just lost a loved one. And you've been praying and asking God, Lord, raise them. Lord, heal them. It's in that time that he's talking about. The time of life. He said in the time of life for the woman in the passage, the time of life was in 9 months. You're going to do something that you thought was impossible. You're going to bring forth a son. Are you with me this morning? In the time of life, thou shalt embrace, thou shalt kabaka, thou shalt have in your arms, out of your loins and out of your womb is going to come a baby. Come on and put your hands together. Wake up in the house this morning. God wants to bless somebody. Hallelujah. So she went home and she shared this information with her husband. And just as the prophet said, the woman in 9 months had a son. She had a son. And I imagine if God blesses you with something that you've been longing for and that you've waited a long time for. I'm not talking about a day or two. I'm not talking about a week or two. I'm talking about years. Years, mother. Years of wanting a son or a daughter saved. Years of longing for having a companion in your life. Years for wanting a home. Years for wanting to see God move in your life in a miraculous way. I'm just not talking about a little thing. I'm talking about a big thing. This woman done went through a long time of life. And in her long time of life, she has not been able to give birth to a child. I would imagine sitting in Shunem watching all the other mothers have babies. I'm reminded of my sister. All the life she had one child and it was stolen from her. But in her face she had to look at me, laying up having babies after babies. Babies like it wasn't nothing to it. Every time she turned around, I was giving birth to a child. I'm talking about looking at something and watching it happen for everybody else. And it ain't happening for you. That's what I'm talking about. This woman wanted a child and now God has given her, granted her a child. I can imagine she was rejoicing. I can imagine she was kissing the ground. I can imagine she even spoiled that boy something rotten. You know how it is, mamas. We wonder how our children end up like they end up, but it's something we're doing as mothers. That's the reason why the Bible says, train up a child in the way. This is the way right here. In the way it should go. So when it gets old, it ain't cheating on no woman. It ain't mistreating no woman. When they get old, they won't depart. So here this woman done had this son. He was old enough to be working in a field one day. Can you imagine? Working in a field, and while he was out in the field, the young man started complaining about his head. Oh, my head, Father, my head. Now, you know how daddies are. I got to experience that on yesterday. My little grandson's crying because something had hit him in the eye. And the father's like, stop that crying, boy. Wipe your eyes. Ain't nothing wrong with you. And the mother's sitting there looking like, oh, somebody rescue my child. So I says, bring him to grandma and let me hold him and do what the mama can't do right now. Because there's something about a mama. She's got this little lipstick that she knows when something ain't right with the child. And it's more than just what the daddy's saying. So here he was out in the field, and he's going through something here. And so the daddy says, just take that boy on in there to his mama. Let his mama deal with it. Have you ever had to do that? Have you ever had single parents to deal with some stuff you just don't want to deal with? I know I did. I can remember a time when I was the one that went out and got to bacon, had to bring it home and fry it up in a pan. Then I had to jump in my pants and get out there and cut the grass. And to top it off, an experience I never thought I'd have was when I had to dig ground and lay a pipe in my own ground to run a new water line. I'm talking about a mama that's willing to do something that the daddy ain't no other would do. According to the time of life, I was sitting like the rest of you single sisters. I wanted God to send me somebody. Don't wait till tomorrow. Do it now, God. Send me somebody that'll help cut this grass. Send me somebody so I can sit down and take a rest. Send me somebody that'll help mother these kids. Send me somebody that'll make all over me and make me feel good. Here this woman was with that boy. They done brought him